A prenup is a document that you enter into before you get married. And in that prenup, what you can do is set out how you would like the financials to work in the event that you wind up divorcing down the road. So you can decide how you want property to get divided, how you want alimony to flow, if you want alimony to flow. What you can't do in a prenup is anything about custody. You can't decide who would get custody, what the parenting plan would be, or anything like that. Prenups are reserved for financial issues. I am a big advocate of prenups for a variety of reasons. First, I think is probably more obvious. If you wind up getting divorced down the line, it's really, really smart to have pre-decided what you want to look like. You will save yourself a lot of pain. You will save your spouse a lot of pain by having pre-decided what you want things to look like. You'll also probably have a faster divorce. Your divorce will also probably be more efficient in terms of the attorney's fees that you expend. But here's the other thing I like about prenups. Prenups force you and your spouse, future spouse, to have the conversation about how you would feel should you decide to end your marriage. You have important discussions about how you view alimony, how you view what's mine and what's yours when you talk about how assets should be divided. So we do far fewer divorces with prenups. When folks have entered into prenups, I don't know the statistics on this, but I don't think the same number of them get divorced as a percentage as people who don't do prenups. So it's also, in many ways, a good way to set the stage for your marriage by having open, candid discussions about money. So what's the process for a prenup? Well, they can take different shapes, but the most common is probably that the two of you decide to do a prenup. Sometimes one person has the idea and the other person is okay going along with it. Sometimes both people want them right from the beginning, and you both retain lawyers. This is very important. A prenup to be enforceable when down the line, if you need your prenup because you've decided to end your marriage, the court needs to know that you both had the ability to get your questions answered, access to legal counsel in order to enforce that prenup. So if you want the prenup to be enforced, which is after all why you're getting it, you want to make sure that you both have lawyers to set yourself up to have the best chance to have a court follow your wishes as you wrote them in the prenup. So both get lawyers. That's the first thing. Your lawyers will meet with you and get a sense of what you're looking for in the prenup. Typically, one of the attorneys takes the lead on drafting the prenup, reviews it with you, makes sure that you understand it, and then shares it with the other attorney so that they can do the same thing with their client. We just make sure that the prenup lines up with what you're both thinking and what you're both willing to agree to. Then we execute the document. We review it, the final draft, and we sign it. Then what happens? Basically, you put it in a drawer and you probably never use it. But even if you never use it, you've had really important conversations. And you know that for whatever reason, one of you ends the marriage down the line, you've pre-decided while you were happy how you want things to work. And you've also had a really important discussion about your values around money. So what if you do decide to get divorced and you did enter into a prenup before you got married? What do you do with it? Well, one of the things that we would plead when we filed your divorce is the existence of the prenup. This is very important. There are rules around how much time you have to let the court know that there's a prenup, and it has to be properly pled. So that's the first thing that you do when you're getting a divorce. You let the court know that there's a prenup. And then the court will go through the process of determining whether or not the prenup is enforceable. If you've done a prenup with competent, experienced divorce counsel and both you and your spouse had access to that counsel and it was a thoughtful prenup and there's nothing unconscionable about enforcing the prenup and you follow all the other rules around prenups, chances are very solid that a court will enforce it should you get divorced down the line. What's a circumstance when a court won't enforce a prenup? Well, there's this provision of the rules in Connecticut that deals with unconscionability. So if a court finds that enforcing a prenup would be unconscionable, it won't go forward and enforce it. So let's think of an example. What if the financial circumstances between two people radically changed during their marriage and one party would be left destitute if the prenup was enforced? A judge might find that unconscionable based upon the circumstances. That's the type of situation where it might not be enforced. It's also a good idea to give enough time to think about the prenup. Both people that enter into it should have access to the option of an attorney to review it with. It's not a good idea to hand your spouse a prenup at the rehearsal dinner, for example, right? They're not in the frame of mind where they have time to think about it. They don't have access to attorney to work through when they sign it. So it's pretty extreme situations where courts don't enforce prenups. But that said, there are some really pretty clear rules that a court looks to when it's trying to figure out if a prenup is enforceable or not. For some LGBTQ families, one of the things that happens is they might have had a very long committed relationship prior to being able to marry. So before marriage equality, they were in a long-term relationship. So when they decide to marry, a prenup can be a useful tool. If you've seen some of my other videos, you may know that the length of the marriage is one of the things that courts consider when they're determining how assets will be divided or whether or not there'll be alimony, and if there is alimony, how much there will be. Well, if you had a relatively short marriage because you were unconstitutionally deprived of your right to marry for a period of years during your relationship, your marriage length might feel shorter than the actual length of your relationship. If that's a situation that you find yourself in, you can pre-decide in a prenup that should you divorce down the line, you want to honor the full length of your marriage when you think about things like alimony or property division. If you are a person who likes to know what to expect in the future and wants to have control over how things look, who wants to have a say in how things would be divided should you down the line divorce, a prenup is an excellent tool in order to pre-decide how things would look. You and your spouse get to decide, not two lawyers arguing, not a judge deciding, the two of you in love on the way to the altar, deciding how you would want your future to look like should you decide to end your marriage. It's actually an extremely loving and thoughtful thing that the two of you can do for each other. And another thing that people tell us all the time is that the conversations that they had together during the prenup were really important in setting a solid foundation for their marriage. Those intimate discussions about our views about money, how we think about money and love, what is mine, what is yours, what is ours, what do I want for my future? All of these things set a really good foundation for the marriage you're entering into. If you'd like to learn more about prenups, talk this through, please give us a call.